Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by...
At Villere's Florist, we deliver the magic of flowers 7 days a week to the North Shore and South Shore in the New Orleans area. Whether it's for birthday parties, baby celebrations, Villere's provides colorful floral displays for all. With a store full of fresh-cut flowers, exotic tropical flowers, orchids, roses, and even fruit baskets, our goal is to make your vision a reality. Villere's Florist, proudly serving Louisiana since 1969.
Dave Miette Insurance Agency, 504-556-0809 or davemietteINSagency.com.
For over 48 years, Southern Tires and Auto Repair has provided services across the New Orleans metro area. Southern Tires offers a range of tires for all vehicles and ATVs. We also have a full suite of auto repair options, including brake repair, rim repair, custom exhaust, steering and suspension, and so much more. Southern Tires and Auto Repair, 2550 Hickory Avenue in Metairie.
C&C Drugs is a family-owned pharmacy that's been serving Southeast Louisiana for over 50 years. Whether you need help taking care of an elderly family member, a growing child, or even a pet, C&C provides patient-centered care for your entire family. C&C Drugs, large enough to serve you, small enough to know you. Locations in Mandeville and Araby.
Good afternoon. Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Of course, we are live on WLAE-TV from our state-of-the-art Pontchartrain Production Studios, also live streaming now on the WLAE-TV YouTube page each and every Thursday at 1 p.m. Today on the program, we'll cover all the home teams, Saints, LSU, Tulane, Pelicans. And breaking it down for you is Sean Fazende of Fox 8 Sports. Sean, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's a great day outside.
Oh, it's a beautiful day.
It's a good time of year in New Orleans.
Yeah, it is. This is the spring, and it's a toss-up for me. Spring or fall.
Right.
I mean, you get the cool, crisp fall days. Those are wonderful, but again, this time of year is fantastic. Normally, this is festival season, right? We're out there, waiting on Jazz Fest, French Quarter Fest, all the school festivals. So hopefully, again, soon we'll be getting back to a sense of normalcy. Of course, by the fall now, we'll be having Saints football, LSU football, Tulane football, and all the festivals. So everybody's going to have to catch up for sure.
Yes. So that should be fun. Look at the weather outside. It's beautiful outside. It's been great the last couple of weekends. So hopefully we get a little more of this over the next couple of weeks.
No doubt. Now tell us about Fox 8, what you guys got going on. Again, the show's a little bit more condensed outside of football season, but nevertheless a lot of great programming.
Yeah, Thursday night, if you're watching us live tonight, Fox 8 Overtime at 10:35, and then Sunday we have our Final Play show at 10:30. We'll wrap up the week. Have our 4, 5, 9, and 10 Sportscast. We do a podcast. You can check out the Final Play app to get that. It's Chris Hagan and myself. We're kind of taking the lead on that. I have a blog, the Further Review blog on fox8live.com. My latest one is the mock draft that I had last week. I should probably get one more in within the next week to 10 days. I'm just trying to see some pieces fall a little bit and just kind of pick up on some nuggets as far as what I'm hearing and get another one out before the draft comes at the end of April. So, yeah, it's the quote-unquote off-season, but it's the busy portion of the off-season for us. So we got to kind of stay on top of what's happening, and a lot of things sort of converge on the sports calendar around this time of year.
Yeah, no doubt. And again, normally it's draft in Zurich on the same weekend. That's not going to happen this year. Jazz Fest always during that time as well. So a lot going on in the sports world. Of course, the Masters starting today, which is obviously huge in this country as well. Baseball started last week, so a lot going on, no doubt. Let's start off with the draft. And of course, for those that, again, have not been keeping up, the Saints were given additional picks. So, again, we know where they'll be picking and how many picks they'll have. First round, 28th overall. Second round, 60th overall. Third round, 2 compensatory picks, 98 and 105. And then fourth round, 133. Sixth round compensatory pick at 218. And then seventh round picks, 229 and 255. So they have some fodder here. They have some ammunition here to go up if they need to. Let's first of all talk about how aggressive you think they'll be in this draft. Is this a draft where you think they'll be aggressive, move up, target certain players, they can plug and play? Or is this a situation where, yeah, you'd like to get some plug and play guys in the first couple of rounds, but after that, you got to fill out that depth that you've lost?
Yeah, it's a great question because I don't know if there's an obvious answer, because the DNA of the Saints under Sean Payton has always been to be aggressive and target certain players, go up and get them if you can get those players, do whatever you have to do to go up and get those types of players when it comes to compensation. However, when you look at this roster as a whole, there are some holes, plenty of holes, and not just starting line holes. I'm talking about holes in regards to depth and that sort of thing. So I think you'll see some form of aggression like they always have. In particular, when you talk about 4 picks in the first 105 selections, I really think there's a lot there they can work with to target certain players if they want to move up, using some back end of the draft capital, or which they've done over the last 3 or 4 years, the future pick model, which has worked for them.
Yes.
It has worked for them. It's produced some good players. So I do think when you have that draft room, you have the grades that you have, and the fact that those grades have been proven to work under Jeff Ireland, and you have a naturally aggressive coach in Sean Payton, it's in his DNA to naturally move up or to naturally be aggressive and target players. But there has to be a realization within an organization right now that this is a good year to have a bigger class. When I say bigger class, I guess it doesn't have to be 8 players, but maybe have a full 7, because they haven't had a full 7 in quite some time.
Yeah. I would also add the undrafted free agent class, which they've done very, very well with during the tenure of Sean Payton here, whether, again, before Jeff Ireland or with Jeff Ireland, they've done a great job in the undrafted free agent class. Look, they've got to be able to fill in a lot of that quality depth that they lost. And, you know, the only, again, you don't necessarily want to do it with young players, but, again, with the Saints cap constraints, you almost have to do it with young players.
Yeah, and this is a challenge.
Yeah.
And you know, it's my natural off-season tendency. It's that off-season optimism that I have. I'm always excited about what's happening, the business workings of the Saints. So I generally lean on, you know, seeing why this makes sense when a move is made, what have you. But when I add up all the things they've had to do this off-season, I mean, I don't have that normal level of optimism that I normally have, because they've lost so many good quality football players, and I still have not seen adequate replacements for those players, at least not enough of them. And so you're going to have to rely on your draft class. You're going to have to rely on undrafted rookies. You're probably going to have to rely on that post-draft, June-ish time where veterans pop up. He's not really sure what's going to be there.
Right.
In hopes of competing at the level you've been competing at for the last 4 years. So I think the Saints have the work cut out for them. I really do. That's not saying they can't do it, but I do think this is as big of a challenge as they've had really since the 2017 offseason. We were coming off their 3rd straight 7-9 season.
Right. And to your point, to me, they need a repeat of the 2017 draft by Ireland. I mean, this is one of those years where you got to do that. And I remind people all the time on the radio show that 2017 draft, they had 2 first-round picks. Okay, and both obviously hit with Lattimore and Ramczyk. So that draft was spectacular in terms of, again, guys that not only play here, but ended up playing elsewhere as well, okay? With that said, let's talk about plug-and-play needs right now.
Yeah, I think it's pretty obvious. I mean, you have the cornerback position, which I'm stunned they have not at least got some form of a veteran to pencil in at that position.
Yes.
Even if you know there's a chance you can beat out by a rookie. Cornerback is number one, because you have a hole there, forget about it, especially in today's NFL. Forget about it. The linebacker position next to Demario Davis is certainly a question. They have some guys there that I know they like, but I don't know that there's anyone proven that you would really trust to have that starting weak side competition. If someone that they have currently is to get that job, earn it through competition by adding some more players in there. That's what I would think.
So you're thinking Zach Bond, Ellis?
Zach Bond, Ellis, Andrew Dowell was his name.
Yes.
There was another, Wynton McManus, and Chase Hansen was another who I actually heard they were high on. So those guys, you know, they have in their building, but you've got to add something there at that position. I don't know if you can say, okay, there's your starter. And if you don't have that guy, then I think that's an obvious, immediate need. Defensive tackle, a nose tackle, next to David Onyemata.
Yes.
Can you trust Shai Tuttle and Malcolm Roach? I say maybe at some point, but not. You can't go into it think, okay, those are my guys. You just can't. And then on the other side of the ball, wide receiver, which they've been able to work around, but at least I feel a little bit more confident in their ability to get something out of those guys because they've always been able to do so. But I still think that's an obvious need.
Right.
And then if you want to play around maybe the tight end position, I can see that's a little bit of a need as well.
I agree. I agree on every one. I would say offensive line, too, if you could get some depth there, quality depth. And then the big question we're going to talk about in a few minutes is going to be quarterback. But let's talk about cornerback first, because, again, I think that's got to be the most glaring need for this team. I would be very shocked if they don't go cornerback in the first round. And, again, if they're going to be aggressive, maybe going aggressive to be able to pick up a cornerback. Although, again, we've talked about it on the radio show, there are some out there that believe that there's just as much quality, that there's guys you can play, playing in the NFL, that will be there in the second round. Possibly.
I think it's got to be first 2 rounds. I'm not saying they have to get a corner in first round, but I think they probably need to get one in the first 2 rounds. That's the way my last mock draft kind of shook out. And I just think, based on the current situation at the cornerback position, without Janoris Jenkins, we don't know what's happening with Marshawn Lattimore. I think that'll work itself out eventually. But you have genuine questions there. Now, perhaps they're able to pull off some kind of trade for a veteran in his prime at some point. Maybe that happens, maybe it doesn't. But as it's currently situated right now, you don't have the luxury of waiting until day 3 to get a corner. You got to get one in day one or day 2.
Probably more than one.
You can probably draft 2. Because
you need depth.
Some versatility. You can use some depth. I mean, one of the depth guys you have right now is Patrick Robinson, who's obviously towards the end of his career. And I love P.J. Williams as a depth guy and a spot safety and a guy that you can fill in a pinch. I just don't like him as a starter. So, I mean, there's obvious needs at that position, and you probably wouldn't be able to. It's not even fair to call it a need right now. That is what they call a must position. They have to get that position right.
Yeah, I would agree. The other one you mentioned is the linebacker position next to Demario Davis. And there are the young players that we talked about. Maybe there's a possibility that Quan Alexander can come back at a reduced salary.
Very reduced.
Based on, again, the injuries he's had. He's not going to make the type of money that he made when again, he was traded to San Francisco, etc. But, again, coming back from the Achilles, the question is, again, as a quick twitch athlete, is he going to be able to come back and be the same player he was?
Now, he has come back from injury in the past, but that's the problem. He's had to come back from injuries multiple times. The guy's, about 28 years old? So still should theoretically be very much in his prime, but he's had to spend a lot of his prime recovering from injuries. And that explosive position, and especially the type of he plays. I mean, he plays with that explosion, that a little bit. He's got that dog in him, that chase. I mean, he gets him. And he's a player that, I could see them, as the dust settles, I just mentioned earlier, maybe June, maybe July, see where he's at health-wise. He got that injury pretty late in the season last year. Perhaps he's someone that you take a look at, but I hate to be like this, but Quan Alexander's days of getting big contracts are over. It's not going to happen. He's got to come back on probably a minimum salary with, if you want to throw some playing time incentives in there, so be it. But I think the door is still open. Of the ones that they let go, that's probably the one where the door is open the most for a potential return, provided he's healthy and provided they don't necessarily address it in a big way in the draft.
Right. Let's talk about a big way in the draft. There are some players that may be available at 28 at the linebacker position that is a prototype, because I think that we see the prototype now. We've said it forever, right? That LSU-type prototype linebacker fits great with what the Saints are doing next to Demario Davis. Quan Alexander is an example of that. Talk about some linebackers that you think may be there at 28 that they may have their eye on.
Well, look, my mock draft had Zaven Collins, and I'm still very high on him. He's a bigger guy, but he's a big guy that's not necessarily a thumper. He's a big guy that can really move. He's fluid, going forward, going backward in coverage, diagnosing plays. Go watch his tape from Tulsa last year. I mean, he was the guy disrupting running plays, cutting through zones to tackle guys in the backfield. And his nose for the football is rare. At least what I saw last year, it is rare for a linebacker. So pass coverage linebackers today, or you find one, I mean, you hold on to him for dear life. So I certainly think he would be a possibility. There's talk of Nick Bolton, the guy from Missouri. I'm not sure where he falls because I've seen the grades all over the place with him as well. And if you talk about a day 2 guy, how about the guy right up the road, Jabril Cox, who was phenomenal in coverage last year for LSU. Now, he struggled against the run, but I thought he was phenomenal last year in coverage for LSU. Yeah.
How about cornerback? Everybody, again, the fan favorite here is J.C. Horn because of the connection with Joe Horn, running a 4.39 in his 40 at South Carolina's pro day. But there are some pretty decent corners out there that are going to go in the first round. Your thoughts?
And at 28, are you going to be fortunate enough to get one of those players? Possibly because of, and this happens every year,
Right.
Eric, the quarterback rush.
No doubt.
Squeezes players back.
Yep.
I mean, I saw one mock that had Davis Mills in the back of the first round. Peter Schrager from NFL Network had him. I was like, wow. And I know he's not getting it out of thin air. He's doing that because he's talking to people. I'm like, my goodness, the desperation kicks in, and all of a sudden, the run on quarterbacks happens, and then the other positions start to get squeezed. So you talk about a guy, I don't think J.C. Horn's going to be there, but he would be my top choice because I watched his tape. That's a guy, he's A, physical, and B, he reads routes as well as anybody in college football. The way he reads routes is probably because his dad was a receiver and taught him the tricks of the trade. There was Asante Samuel, but I think he's probably going to be more of a nickel type player. I think the Saints are set, at least for first round type players there.
Surtain?
Surtain is going to be gone. Newsome out of Northwestern. I watched his tape yesterday. Got great size, 6 foot 190, perfect. Can turn, can press, and can also play the cover 3. And the Saints like to play that 2-man system. That really but he's got the fluidity to play the man covers all across the field. So, of the guys that could be potentially available, I like him at 28 to be available. Now, if somebody like Horn slips to say 20.
Right.
I say go get him.
Oh, you got to.
I say go get him. Now, I know there's the connection with Joe Horn and Sean Payton. Is there a little tension
It's
there?
about talent.
At this point, can this guy help me win?
Right.
So I think that can all be on water under the bridge anyway. So yeah, I think there are some corners that could potentially be available, but watch the run on quarterbacks to determine what could happen with the cornerbacks.
Let's talk quarterback, because there are rumors out there the Saints are really still looking at quarterback. Okay,
why should they? I mean, why shouldn't they?
Right. I mean, we heard this week Trask was a guy that was thrown out there. We've heard many names over the last few weeks in terms of young quarterbacks that would come in and be groomed as maybe the next starter for this team. What do you think? You think they'll be aggressive?
I have said, really, since this offseason began, I've been on this show a few times, your radio show weekly.
Right.
I'm probably the biggest fan of the Saints strongly considering drafting a quarterback because can you honestly answer me the question, do I have a quarterback on my roster that's going to get me to a Super Bowl? And you haven't had to answer that question for 15 years because you had one. Now you don't. So to me, and Sean Payton understands how important that position is.
Of course.
He preaches it to everyone. So to me, yes, you do your homework, you do your due diligence, and if that means you like a guy and there's a chance you can move up to get him, or a guy falls to you, whatever the case may be, I think you absolutely do that. Now, the trick is, I thought Sean Payton kind of alluded to that in interviews and certain things that I've read. You don't want to overdraft for a quarterback. You don't want to miss on a quarterback. Draft a guy, basically, I guess, too high.
Right.
But the point is, they've always had the luxury of not having to be desperate at that position. Are they at desperation now? Probably not desperate, but you're at that point where you have to at least cover your tracks a little bit here. And so when I heard that they like Kyle Trask, it didn't surprise me the least because he's a very good decision maker, been through a tough road to get where he's at. I think you can certainly respect that.
Yes.
Had to deal with a lot in that regard. Accurate passer, good decision maker. And at the end of the day, I think Sean Payton, those are the qualities he's gonna always want: accuracy and good decision making, regardless of what else they bring you. Yeah, that's what he's gonna want.
No, I agree with you. Let's talk quarterback room now, and with Jameis Winston and Taysom Hill. Both guys are on prove-it-to-me contracts, really one-year contracts. Again, Hill getting a little bit more because he's more jack of all trades. Is there something? And actually, I've said it before, and this is no slight against Taysom Hill. I just think in a year where you lose Drew Brees, he is so much more valuable playing the jack of all trade role than to have him as a starting quarterback. You lose so much by not having that weapon. But that said, I'd like to talk about Teddy Bridgewater for a minute, because Bridgewater is probably either going to be cut or traded. If he's cut, it'll be about $7.8 million in savings for the Panthers. He got $33 million guaranteed with that original contract. He's got $17 million this year, and $20 million next year on the books for any team that trades for him. So again, you're really going to have to want Teddy Bridgewater and have to think he's going to be your starter if that's the where you're going to go. As far as the Saints go, if he's ultimately released, I would think he'd have to come back on a contract similar to what Jameis Winston has, $4.5 million with the possibility of getting up to $12 million with incentives. Great the locker room loves him. The fan base loves him. He knows the system. He is a game manager. He checks all the boxes for this team. It would make that quarterback room, in my opinion, one of the strongest in the NFL. It would be great competition between the three of them. The possibility of it happening, probably very, very slim. But what are your thoughts?
He gets cut. I mean, I don't see a problem with it, provided he understands the situation he's getting into.
Right.
You said something interesting there. Best quarterback room in football. Perhaps if you graded it out, I just don't see a top-end guy with any of those guys. A guy, at least not now. I don't know about Jameis Winston yet. I can't absolutely say he's going to be an elite player. And we've seen from Teddy Bridgewater. We've seen from Taysom Hill. The more I watch Teddy Bridgewater, the more I see his game, the more I realize what he did with the Saints, what he was in Minnesota. He's probably, at this point of his career, probably in more of a Nick Foles role, right? Okay. A really good relief pitcher. So that'd be great to bring him in because he does some things that you like. Makes good decisions. Mostly accurate with the football. And not really an explosive arm, but I think he makes good decisions. And if you have a good running game, which the Saints will have, maybe he's a guy that can help your team. So, yeah, I can't sit here and say they need to look behind door number 3, and when another door is open with a possibility of Teddy Bridgewater, I say no, don't get him. I think it's a possibility. Okay. You can certainly check that out and bring him in, and maybe he competes, and he's a guy that can, make the room better. Maybe he earns a starting job, whatever the case may be. But I still think you're left with the fundamental question: where's my championship quarterback? And I don't know if you're even going to get it this offseason, whether it be the draft or the 2 guys you have now, or if you sign a guy like Teddy Bridgewater.
Well, I don't think we know one way or the other if they have a championship quarterback in that room because of the uncertainty with Jameis Winston. 111 turnovers in his career. Even though, again, he said all the right things in the Huddle and Flow podcast, which, again, I've told folks that watch this show and listen to the radio show, even if you're not in the podcast, you should go at least listen to that if you're interested in what's going on with Jameis Winston and the New Orleans Saints. Yesterday, day before yesterday, Peyton was with Albert Breer, the Monday morning quarterback, and his quote was, "The most important thing in leading this team is leading the offense to scores, protecting the football and scoring. There are certain commandments that we think are real important. Both of them have shown great leadership skills. Both of them have very unselfish. It's a really good room for a while here. Even back when Teddy was in the room, the rest will take care of itself." He's
brought him up several times when he wasn't even a member of the team.
Right.
Of the last calendar year when he was a Carolina Panther. So yeah, it's all absolutely. And I think you could see with each player, Taysom, Jameis, and Teddy, their strengths in each one.
Yep, no doubt.
And the liability in each one is, I said it a few minutes ago. At the end of the day, Sean Payton is always going to want a guy that's accurate with the football and makes good decisions with the football. And Teddy did that for the most part when he was here for 5 games as a starter.
How do they move forward in restocking this roster with, and you mentioned it, there's always that, the team drafts rookies, they look at their roster, they drafted rookies at a position where they feel they can plug and play that rookie. They got a veteran that again is making maybe a little bit too much money. They release him, they eat whatever dead cap it is, and then we see these veterans on the street either during training camp or right before training camp. Saints are in a tough spot. You mentioned them before we started the show. Saints get more into the cap just to sign their rookie class here. Ramczyk, Williams, Lattimore. What's happening there?
Yeah, and had there been an extension done with one of those guys, there's probably 2 or 3 guys you get to save.
Right, on the roster.
From the chopping block. You could have stayed and that really good, bottom first tier, second tier of your roster that you gutted.
Why do you think that didn't happen? You would think
there was talk of, do you give up your leverage if you're at that point? Perhaps. Who knows how far negotiations went? But to me, I can understand Lattimore as being a little murkier, even Marcus Williams because the safety market was still trying to come together. But Ryan Ramczyk was an obvious one.
Right.
You pay him as the highest paid tackle in football. Just pay it.
It's a no-brainer.
He's the guy. I mean, he has earned that title until the next offseason when the next guy comes up.
Sure.
So, that is probably, I've been asked a lot, what surprised you the most of this offseason? It's 2 things. Franchising Marcus Williams, because I wasn't sure that was going to happen, and B, the fact that they didn't get those extensions done before free agency to go out and create space.
It really is mind-blowing because, again, they're going to get done eventually no matter what. Now, maybe they were trying to get something done with Williams, couldn't get it done, and they ended up going with the franchise tag. We're going to get into the Lattimore situation in a minute. That that may slow that process down. But Ramczyk was a no-brainer. And look, Malcolm Brown was costing you $5 million this year. He was your run stopper. Now again, you got a 7th-round pick for him, and I get that, but he was more valuable than that 7th-round pick. And you let him go with a $5 million contract, which is not a lot for a guy like Malcolm Brown.
Yeah, and he was a guy, when he was off the field for a couple of games last year, you saw that dip, and they were phenomenal run defense last year, and that's a gamble. And, you know, we kind of took that run defense for granted a little bit because everybody talks about pass-happy, NFL, the way the game is going, blah, blah, blah. Let me tell you something. Stopping the run is still very, very important because if you can't stop the run, you can't stop anything.
There's no doubt. Jacksonville liked him so much, they extended his contract immediately. What does that tell you?
They saw the tape.
Right.
They saw the tape we all saw.
Right, of course. And so that to me was what's going on behind the scenes. They couldn't get that done. At least, look, I get maybe Lattimore, and then with the gun situation, and of course Williams, you know, maybe you let him go on the tag for a year, and you see if last year was an anomaly, or if he really has turned the corner or not. And it gives you a time that if you really want to draft a safety, or if there's another safety out there, you can look for that. But again, you didn't want to be in a situation where you let Janoris Jenkins go, and then of course you got to hold safety as well. You just couldn't afford that. I understand that. But the Ramczyk thing is mind blowing. Let's talk Lattimore now. Arrested for again. Possession of a loaded, stolen gun, a Glock 19. Did not alert the police that he had a weapon. It's a 4th-degree felony in Cleveland. Look, we'll find out more about this as we go forward, but he's never been arrested. He's never had an issue. My guess is hometown boy in Cleveland. This is going to be pled down, okay, and probably going to have community service, etc. NFL's not going to plead it down. NFL's going to give him a 1 or 2 game suspension. But with that said, talk about him being involved in that with the Cleveland gang unit, stopping that car, the individuals he was with, having the stolen gun for a guy that has made millions of dollars, and you could buy your own gun instead of again buying one on the black market. Talk a little bit about it.
Well, again, the fact-finding phase is still somewhat developing, if you will, and I think that's probably why you haven't heard much from the Saints on it. But I think we can objectively say he put himself in a tough situation there. He should not have been in that situation with those weapons. Again, he's had a clean record before. He's never been arrested, never had so much as a speeding ticket before, as far as I know. So he should not have put himself in that situation. We know that. Okay, that is now done. Now you get to what actually happened, and you go through the legal process. I'm not as well versed in Cleveland or Ohio law, what you could possibly do in that scenario. I know it was a 4th-degree felony because it was a firearm. I know there's normally a monetary value, but because it was a firearm, it became a 4th-degree felony. So whatever situation, however his legal team wants to handle that, so be it. In the Saints case, this is interesting because you're probably going to have to deal with some form of a suspension now. I mean, considering David Onyemata with his situation, was it paraphernalia? He was I forgot what it was. It was
there was paraphernalia and marijuana delivered to his house.
He was suspended for a game. So is it more with the NFL? Who knows? But I think that reality is something the Saints are going to have to prepare for. So you put your team at a disadvantage for at least a game, probably 2, depending on what the NFL comes to. So. As far as his future with the club, I don't think it's going to skew it too far, unless more details come out that there was more to it and it was more severe. And if there was more severe things involved, then I could see the punishment being more severe. And then you have to maybe pause it for the Saints.
Because he is a top corner, and look, he's a top 10 corner at least, right? How much does that hurt his leverage? I don't know if it hurts his leverage any, because the Saints are in a situation where you don't let good football players walk out the door, and you definitely don't let a guy that, again, is top 10 in his position walk out the door at a position that's very difficult to find good players.
Who's on the other side of him?
Nobody.
Exactly. So the Saints are probably doing the smart thing by just standing back, letting the process play out. They're going to have their plan for whatever they need to do. On the surface, this would not be something in terms of that. I would think this wouldn't be something they would consider releasing him unless it blew up and it was something way more severe than was initially reported. But I don't, from a leverage standpoint, the only thing I can really say is they probably have paused any sort of negotiations that they've had at this point, just because you got to let this dust clear a little bit, and then perhaps you can pick up things a little bit later when things get clearer.
Even from a PR standpoint, it doesn't look good to be able to re-sign a guy that, again, has a fourth-degree felony hanging over his head, even though you need the salary cap room, which, again, brings me back to Ramczyk. Why, again, this has not been done. It needs to get done quickly because, again, they're going to have to be able to start making some moves. Look, when I look at that list of players that they've lost, it really surprised me. I got to be honest with you. Look, I always felt the Saints would keep anybody they wanted to keep, and I think for the most part they did. But it surprised me that Ramczyk was not done because, as you mentioned, there would have been other players on that list that have gone elsewhere that would still be on this team right now.
Yeah, and these aren't. I mean, Breeze retired. Now you're talking about Emmanuel Sanders, Jared Cook, Josh Hill, Thomas Morstead, Malcolm Brown. I mean, the list goes on. I counted 13 guys that either retired, traded, cut, or was a free agent that signed elsewhere. 13 guys that all fit into that realm of starter, spot starter, or good second-tier player. Michael Burton's another one. Didn't he sign with, who did he sign with? It was, gosh, I forget where he signed.
He did resign.
But he signed somewhere outside of the
Detroit?
Saints, possibly. And there was no, of the guys they brought in to replace some of the guys they've let go or are no longer with them. I'm not sure there's a single one that's an upgrade over what you originally had.
Right. No, that's the key. All right, you're watching Inside New Orleans Sports. Our guest today is Sean Fazende of Fox 8 Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. We'll take a pause to hear from our underwriters, and when we come back, we'll talk Pelicans, LSU, Tulane, all coming up here on Inside New Orleans Sports. Stay tuned.
Air conditioning, heating, and refrigeration has been family-owned and operated since 1989. Burkhardt has energy-efficient solutions and offers brands such as Mitsubishi ductless AC units and Amana, the only manufacturer with a lifetime unit replacement warranty. Burkhardt's offers maintenance bundle packages that include servicing your AC, generator, and tankless water heater. For more information on the services Burkhardt's provides, visit acpromise.com. Burkhardt's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration, providing comfort for life.
Experiencing rough weather with a bad roof can be a nightmare. It doesn't have to be.
Suburban Roofing, because when it comes to roofing, there is a difference.
Located at 3701 Iberville Street in Mid-City is Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Open 7 days a week, Katie's offers daily specials for lunch, dinner, and Sunday brunch. Serving New Orleans cuisine such as fried shrimp platters, grilled redfish, and a fully stocked bar. And don't forget about our expanded event seating and local entertainment. Featured on the Best of Food Network's diners, drive-ins, and dives, Katie's Restaurant and Bar.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Today, Sean Fazende of Fox 8 Sports is with us. We'll switch to the Pelicans. 22-29, 11th in the West. They're 2 games out of the 10th spot. They've lost 4 of their last 5. Look, we kind of figured this was going to happen in the NBA because of the 72-game season condensed into a small amount of time. And we've seen this throughout the league, especially with older players, with the injuries. But again, the Pelicans have been pretty much injury-free throughout the entire season, and really not a lot to show for it, with, again, only 22 wins. But they're in the midst of a rash of injuries. Of course, Zion just came back with a sprained thumb. Brandon Ingram has a right big toe irritation. Josh Hart is probably out for the rest of the season with, again, the UCL injury in his right thumb. Of course, we'll just call it the Breeze injury. Kyra Lewis has a right calf strain. We got Nickeil Alexander-Walker with a high ankle sprain. Lonzo Ball's coming off a hip flexor. He's been back for the last 2 games. I mean, it came at the worst time for them because you're trying to make a playoff run now. We've had a chance now to be able to see some of the backups. We've seen Marshall, who's played hot and cold at times. I got to throw out last game against Brooklyn. We'll get into that in a moment. Iwandu, who came in the trade for J.J. Redick. Johnson, who came in the trade for J.J. Redick. Both guys have been on the floor. Now they bring in Isaiah Thomas, the journeyman veteran. And, of course, he's seeing playing time. There are 21 games left in the season now. And they're in the playoff race, but are they really in the playoff race?
Right. No, and it's a shame because like I was not one to say this is going to be a transitional year, another year. I thought this was a team that could battle for, the 7th or 8th spot. Now they'll be lucky if they can, battle their way into that 10th spot. Was it a game and a half or 2 games out of that?
Yeah, 2 games out.
2 games out of that 10th spot. Is it Golden State holding that 10th
Yes.
spot? Yeah. So, but it's the same old problem, Eric. It's the same old problem. If they guard threes, they have a chance to win. If they don't guard threes, they're losing by 30.
Yep.
Or double digits. It's crazy. I mean, was it 11 for 11 against Atlanta the other night? Was it 18 three-pointers last night?
It was ridiculous last night.
For Brooklyn, it's the same old story.
It was an embarrassment.
The best thing about this season is you figured out, okay, you're going to win with Zion playing this way.
Right.
And I think that reset the organization, and perhaps, hopefully, that resets David Griffin's thinking, Stan Van Gundy's thinking, and perhaps from here they get better. But you just hate to waste an opportunity with this guy.
Another year
you
of
just
Zion.
don't know. We've seen it.
Twice.
Last night, the Pelicans game goes off. I look up, and what do I see? The Phoenix game, and there's Chris Paul.
Right.
And everybody always knows what happened with Anthony Davis. So you can't just assume it's always going to. There's always next year, because as we've seen in the NBA with a superstar in this market, it's not a guarantee.
No, it's not. And to your point, you started off this season with, again, a philosophy going one way, okay? And then now in mid-season, you change that, and the change in philosophy now is point Zion. So you had an incomplete roster coming into the season. You have even more of an incomplete roster now, because if you're going to play Zion as a point forward going forward, you have to surround him with a different type of player than maybe what you were thinking about surrounding with earlier, but before he really showed that he could play that position and play it well. The question is, at this point, is it better for this franchise to get to the playoffs and have Zion again participate in the playoffs, the team, especially these young players, getting another taste of the playoffs, or getting into the lottery and getting another player?
No, get to the playoffs. Get to the playoffs. I am for a young superstar getting in the most crucial situations as quickly as possible. NBA lottery, I think a lot of people, NFL fans, think of the NBA draft, well, we have to draft, but it's not the same as the NFL draft.
No.
And if you're picking, 12th, 13th, whatever it is, you probably get a decent player, an impact player, or someone that can come in and maybe give you some minutes, but you're not getting the star of a class. So I 100% think try to get into the playoffs, get into this postseason. That should be the organization's mindset right now. If it's not, that's a problem, because I want Zion in as many big-time situations as possible so he can grow, and eventually he's going to be the face of the league eventually.
Yes.
And hopefully he's the face of the league while wearing New Orleans across his chest.
Yep.
And he's going to become the face of the league by dominant playoff moments. So get him in the postseason.
Yep. No, I'm with you. To me, the lottery pick is nice, but at the end of the day, lottery picks are a crapshoot anyway in the NBA.
It's not the same. Right.
It really is. It's not like you're going up and it's almost like chasing the quarterback in the NFL, right? You really don't know what you're getting. Yeah, you might hit on one, but you look at Cleveland and other places where they continue to chase quarterbacks. That happens all the time. In New Orleans, you're gonna have to try to figure out again what philosophy you're gonna go with going forward. That looks like, again, point Zion. So now you got to be able to fill around him. Last night, Zion's consecutive streak, by the way, ended, and that's pretty sad because he was on the cusp of history in the NBA. 20 or more points, 50% shooting, came to an end in Brooklyn last night. He's now goes in the record books, tied with LSU's Shaquille O'Neal for all time in terms of 20 points or more and 50% shooting. He just couldn't do it by himself, and that's basically what it was. Last night was putrid. It was embarrassing, hard to watch. Look, I understand the Brooklyn Nets are way above what the Pelicans are, and look, they beat them at home. And I understand that there was a different deal here, but. And the Brooklyn didn't look like they were interested when they were here in the Smoothie King Center. But you cannot get embarrassed like that. Okay, you got to be able. And look, guys that were playing last night were guys that were journeymen in a lot of cases who were trying to hang on in the NBA. Okay, or young players. Okay, you got to have more enthusiasm, especially on the defensive end, and that's been the issue with this team all season long. Again, on the defensive end, not having the focus on the defensive end, game in, game out.
That's it, and that's really the key word. You have to, because clearly this isn't a naturally defensive team, although I don't have Eric Bledsoe, but whatever. He all of a sudden doesn't want to play defense, or he's just not as effective as a defender in a Pelicans uniform. So if you know that and your natural tendency is to be a little bit lackadaisical defensively, you've got to have the professionalism and the focus to say, this is where I have to focus my game. It does not come as naturally to me, and hopefully it will get more natural with the more they improve. But I mean, it's the same stat line every night. If an opponent is shooting threes and they're making them, guess what? Pelicans are losing that game.
That's right. There's no doubt. With that said, looking to the future, Lonzo Ball was not traded at the trading deadline. The Pelicans David Griffin will have egg on his face if he does not re-sign Lonzo Ball now, or is not involved in some kind of sign and trade that brings back, again, assets that you can utilize, not just some throwaway player for a bad contract, because they're about to get out of some bad contracts now. Josh Hart, who's the heart and soul of this team, again, another restricted free agent. Now, again, both are going to demand substantial increases, and in both cases, the Pelicans have a right to match. Be interesting to see again how that plays out. They got some bad contracts coming off the books as well. James Johnson, who came over in the J.J. Redick trade, $16 million, he's off the books. Adams' contract diminishes by $12 million next season, which again is huge. Bledsoe has $18 million on the books, but in 22-23, only $3.9 million guaranteed on that next contract, so it makes him a little bit easier to move in the offseason without having, again, a 2-year albatross contract. And plus, look, I just don't think he wants to be here, doesn't want to play here. He's, again, he's the second coming of Eric Gordon. I guarantee he ends up on a contender somewhere. We're going to see Eric Bledsoe that we thought we'd see here. So there is going to be some money available. And a lot of that money is going to probably go to Lonzo Ball and Josh Hart if they keep those guys. It'll be interesting on how they play this out, because now, as I mentioned a couple times, you got to have a vision for this team going forward with Point Zion and be able to surround him with guys that can shoot, okay, and also guys that can play defense, which to me is the most important thing lacking on this team.
Well, look, David Griffin's the smartest guy in the room, so this is where he's got to earn his money. I mean, he's got it now. Now you know,
right?
Now you know what he has, what he has going with Zion or Point Zion, whatever you want to call it. You have your situation with your finances. Who knows what's going to be available this offseason.
Right.
So now you have to build a team with that.
Right.
Now, do it. I mean, there are no excuses now.
Plus all the first-round picks. You have
draft capital. You have everything.
So many assets between first and second-round picks that you have the ability to do deals now.
Right.
So again, and to me, this has got to be the year. See, you can't get into a situation where you say, we're going to wait till the 4th year when Zion is getting ready to do his second contract and gets that big contract, because we know what happens down the line here. Within 2 years, the guy's pushing himself out. He got the big deal. Within a couple of years, you're pushing yourself out. Happened with Chris Paul, happened with Anthony Davis. It will happen with Zion. I do want to ask you about the J.J. Redick situation and trashing the organization on the way out. You know, I mean, look, I've said my piece on that if J.J. Redick was playing like J.J. Redick, he could have been in Brooklyn or anywhere else he wanted to be. The issue with J.J. Redick is J.J. Redick just didn't play well and was injured. So I just don't understand the parting shot against the organization.
Whatever. I mean, to me, 36, 37 years old, if you're that specific and where you want to continue your career, it's probably best to just hang it up at this point. I mean, just hang it up. I mean, David Griffin is going to have, he's responsible for making the best deal. So rather than buy out and let you walk without getting anything, you at least got something
you gotta have asset for
a guy like J.J. Redick. But if you're that hell-bent or that specific in where you want to go, to me, and it doesn't work out for you, to me, it's time to hang it up. Because at that point, then basketball is not what's most important. It's where you're playing, what your family can do. At some point, basketball has taken a back seat at that point. So unnecessary shot, whatever. I think everybody's moved on from it.
Yep, no doubt. Let's talk about LSU. Whoa. I mean, that's all I can. I mean, that's just, I mean, it is. It just, I have spent more time talking about off the field over the last 3 weeks than I have on the field. And again, that's just not the way it's supposed to be. Sexual misconduct investigations, lawsuits, NCAA investigations in football and basketball. As I mentioned, more news off the field than on the field. You're a graduate. I know, again, you love that university, and it's got to be hurting you, again, as much as anybody on what you're seeing right now.
It's a circus, and you knew at some point the counterpunch was coming, right? You saw that in-depth report. We saw the recordings with the lady from the Superdome, which certainly did not look good from that sort of thing, from that camp. We saw the $50 million lawsuit. You saw that press conference yesterday, which was really something. Pretty in-depth lawsuit. You see what's happening at the state capitol right now. There's a lot going on. Clearly, there are some things up in my alma mater that must be fixed and must be adjusted. And look, who knows what they're doing right now in terms of getting that fixed, but you've got to get a handle on this thing, because every single day there's a new bombshell, there's a new layer to this, and it just keeps adding and adding and adding. Somebody has to get out in front of this and not make it go away. That's obviously not going to happen, but at least set the tone for what LSU is doing as a university, as someone that mentors students, whatever the case may be. They have to get out in front of this thing and really start moving in that direction, and just deal with whatever you have to deal with, kind of the tentacles of that report as it comes. But it's a bizarre situation, and it's this perfect storm of Louisiana politics, LSU, the craze that is LSU football, and LSU, the university. It's just all converging, and it's really creating just a chaotic atmosphere.
They need leadership.
Exactly.
Bad.
Somebody has to get out in front.
Somebody's got to, even if you're look, and you cannot downplay this when you're talking about sexual harassment, sexual assault. Again, female students. At least 10 athletes that have been involved in either sexual assault or sexual harassment. A former head coach that was harassing female students within the office. Dictating on what they had to look like to even work in the office. All that stuff. Oh my God! How could you allow that to happen? And then the cover-up that subsequently happened after that. Okay, which again, cover-up is always worse than the crime. But somebody's got to take a leadership role here and get in front of this, as you mentioned. And then also, again, look, I'm not saying that you spin this, but, a lot of this was going on, again, this is 8-9 years ago, okay? And the question I'm asking is, knowing everything we know, again, and it's a horrible situation, but let's take it back to the field for a second. Let's take it back to the locker rooms for a second. Is that a distraction for the teams and the players today? Or can they insulate themselves, saying this happened under the Miles era, not under the Orgeron era? The situation with Wade is, again, that's a different situation. We'll get into that in a few minutes. But, with everything swirling around the university right now, because, again, there is an investigation into the football program right now with the NCAA, on top of the Title IX violations, on top of, again, 2 federal investigations.
Department of Education now coming.
Right, come on. Office of Civil Rights. I mean, it is absolutely embarrassing what's going on right now. And now, again, the Board of Supervisors are talking about firing Taylor Porter, which has been the law firm for LSU since the 1930s. And look, rightly so, I agree with them. You can't get in a situation where a few Board of Supervisors members decide, again, they're going to cover something up or put a wall around Les Miles and let everybody in on this situation. And then now those current Board of Supervisors have eggs on their face because they had no idea what was going on. No, Taylor Porter is involved in this as well.
Well, look, yeah. Whatever they want to do with that, that's fine. But your initial question was a distraction. And I think inside football ops,
right?
All right, no one really is a holdover from the Miles era, if I'm not mistaken, other than Orgeron, really.
Right.
And that's
right.
And obviously he's done his part, or at least trying to do his part in terms of changing the direction. So I think it's pretty insulated at the football ops building. They're at a pretty important time. They're in spring football, coming off a terrible season. They got a lot of guys back. So I think football I don't think they're distracted at all. In fact, I think a guy like Ed Orgeron, it's probably his saving grace right now that he's still got his football team to coach and not have to, and when he's not coaching, obviously this stuff comes up. I guess whatever little bit he has to deal with this. I know he didn't go to the Capitol, or I know he sent the letter, or whatever the case may be. He sent the letter,
but there were 10 members of LSU that needed to be able to testify today before that select committee. I believe only as of the airing of this show, the interim president was there. Everyone else is in a situation where, and rightly so, their lawyers say, look, we cannot comment. There's a lawsuit now.
Right.
There's a $50 million lawsuit, and no one's going to go on the record right now until this lawsuit is resolved.
Yeah, and that lawsuit, who knows how long that will take to get resolved, what's going to happen of that. But I guess my point is, inside that building, I sort of get the feel that, they're aware of what's happening, and they even more aware that they have to be very mindful of their actions as LSU football players. But I think there's also a realization that this is really, no one really is left over from the Les Miles era. And really the tone from the organization has been that, from LSU, has been, this was happening under Les Miles.
Yeah, but
But it hasn't always been the case, right? Because they had the Drake Davis situation and they had other,
Right, no, there's been some bleed over, but if I'm anything, I'm out front and I'm trying to impress that point on everybody. This happened under a different regime. And again, that's the lack of leadership we're seeing right now at LSU. And I'm not trying to say you need to downplay that. Believe me, I'm not. Okay, I'm as disgusted as anybody about what is going on there. Spring practice is going on right now. Getting ready to get to the spring game in a couple weeks. Quarterback's been the big microscope up to this point. What are your thoughts on this team going into the spring game?
I don't see how you could look at this team and not be a little bit excited just in terms of what they have coming back, where they're strong. They do have some weaknesses on the roster. It's obviously not as of a completer roster as a couple of years ago, but given how low it was last year, I think it's nice to turn the corner and feel some momentum, feel some positivity and some optimism in this program. Quarterback position to me is interesting because you have three guys with legitimate starting experience. Winslow Ogeron never had that. And you have a guy he keeps bringing up in Garrett Nussmeier. Right. So I think there's a little bit of excitement given how terrible last year was. Again, it seems to happen sometimes, all the chaos involving LSU. Right. And there's chaos when it's good and when it's bad, because it was a parade the year before that every single day for LSU. So I think on the field, your strength is at the line of scrimmage on both sides. You have strength at quarterback regardless of who wins. You have a receiver. We'll see what happens at running back, linebacker, and at safety. But I think on the surface, it looks like a team that can compete to win 10 games again in 2021.
Eric Gilbert, back visiting LSU after again saying he was going to sign with Florida. I guess he found out that he would have to sit out a year. A guy that, again, has pro aspirations. You sit out a year, then again, you've only got maybe 2 years to be able to prove it to the pros. You come back as a junior. Do you think LSU is going to take him back? Should he be welcomed back to LSU?
Yeah, I think they would welcome him back, provided everything that he needed. And, there's whispers about what was really going on behind the scenes. Provided that was worked out and he can feel comfortable being in Baton Rouge. Yes, I think they would, because I mentioned they have Keyshawn Boutte, they have guys like Coy Moore. I don't know if he's going to be a true 2 at this point, but maybe a pencil.
And he's got his issues right now with the Baton Rouge Police.
And you have Dre Jenkins. But my point is, you need pass catch. You can add another pass catcher, especially one as talented as Eric Gilbert, who him and Cole Taylor. I think he's more of a pass catching guy. Cole Taylor can be a pass catching guy. I think he's a good football player, a great football player, and Ed Ogeron generally is forgiving by nature, but especially for big-time players at big-time positions of need. I think if LSU will welcome him back, I think that is a given because he visited them, and certainly there's interest. It would just be a matter of, does he want to return? And if he returns, to me, you got to return with some stability. You got to have a full-fledged, okay, I am returning and I am fully committed to you guys.
Yeah, well, Sean Fazende always telling it like it is. That's right on target. Basketball. Will Wade's got the NCAA lurking. Yesterday, Trendon Walford said he's going on to the NBA. He's getting an agent. It's expected that Smart, Thomas, and Days will follow the lead there. His recruiting class right now on paper not that great, but again, with the transfer portal full of players, he will be able to rebuild this roster. The question is, at what point does the shoe drop? We just saw Sean Miller fired at Arizona. At what point does the shoe drop on Will Wade?
Who knows? I thought he would have been gone a few years ago. But
there are some that say this is unfair now because it's been lurking for so long.
Yeah. Who knows? And I'm sure it puts LSU at a disadvantage if there is perhaps NCAA sanctions coming, and perhaps their head coach would have to leave. He's doing pretty well on the court. He won an NC2A basketball game this year, did well in the SEC tournament, finished strong, had a good core group, a guy that's going pro, probably going to be a few guys going pro. So I don't know. I mean, what do you do if you're LSU? Do you move on from a guy like Will Wade? He's done well on the court, but I mean, in circles around the NCAA and basketball circles, I mean, he's got a reputation. So I don't know. Again, where is Scott Woodward? Where is he at? Well, I haven't seen him.
He's got an out with him. He didn't hire him. So again, ultimately, if the shoe
all
drops,
the more reason why, if
right.
he wanted to clean house, he could.
Right. I don't know. Again, I think he has higher aspirations than being the athletic director at LSU. I think he'd like to be either the chancellor or the president of the university. We only got a few minutes left. I want to get through a couple things quickly. Baseball, 17-11, 1-8 in the SEC, swept in their last two series. I get it. Tennessee, Vanderbilt. All of a sudden, the cat calls are out again from Nery's head.
And this time around, I have been a staunch defender of Paul Mainieri, but this time around, he looks tired. You know, he's older than Skip Bertman was when Bertman finally retired. We said it on our podcast. It's time for him. They're not gonna. Let's stay positive our way through this. It's time to embrace the desperation, tear some things up. Bring in some motivational speakers, tweak the lineup, mess with your rotation, whatever you have to do. Motivational videos, I don't know. Bring in some former athletes, I don't know. You've got to, because you're at the line right here. Because if you keep going down the 1-9 path, this season is going to be an absolute disaster.
Yep.
So you better rally. And I'm for anything to get this team out of its funk and to rally.
Yep. Let's go to Tulane for a couple minutes. Willie Fritz is said to be on the short list for the Kansas head coaching job. He's done a phenomenal job at Tulane. They're ready to take the next step there. Your thoughts on the possibility of him leaving?
I would be a step down for him. I would not take that job if I were him. I think, the reputation of Kansas right now has been, down with obviously the Les Miles situation. B, it's a hard place to win. It's not a great place to win. C, you've just turned that program around.
Right.
You're at the point now where you're a solid 7-win, 6-win program who now probably can get into the discussion of winning conference titles.
Yes.
You're living in New Orleans. He's always lived in a college town, he said, before he moved to New Orleans. I think that would be, I understand the allure from Missouri or Arkansas. Because remember a couple of years ago, he was up for those two jobs.
He was.
But Kansas, I wouldn't touch that.
I'm with you. I wouldn't touch it either. I definitely would not touch it either. He's in a much better situation than Tulane. Hopefully, again, he sees that.
Situation, and he made the situation better. It was him. He did it.
He did it.
So
he did
enjoy the fruits of your labor.
No doubt. And you got a quarterback. Yeah. Again, it's hard to find good quarterbacks. You got to get two that are there as well. Sean Fazende of Fox 8 Sports. Thanks for joining us as always. Thanks so much for tuning in. Remember, there's plenty of ways to be able to catch this program, okay? We have a rebroadcast at 6 p.m. tonight on WLAE-TV. We have a rebroadcast at 10 p.m. on WLAE-TV The Deuce. On Friday night, 9 o'clock, Pelican Sports Television, 10 p.m. on WLAE-TV. 2 a.m. on The Deuce on Saturday morning, and then 5 p.m. on Pelican Sports Television. We're always on ericasher.com. We're always on the WLAE-TV YouTube page. And we're always on our social media platforms as well. You catch me on the radio. That's 4 to 6 weekdays on 106.1 FM. That's Nash Icon. You can listen live at ericasher.com. The podcast on all the major podcasting platforms. So you can check that out there as well as ericasher.com. All the previous episodes of this program is at ericasher.com as well. Also want to thank Sean Fazende of Fox 8 Sports for joining us. The great crew here at WLAE-TV that do a fantastic job, including Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, Tommy Fairley, Tommy O'Connor, also Will Ingram, and my director, William Hill. Want to thank our underwriters also for supporting this program. Thanks to them, and please support our underwriters. And again, thank you for watching Inside New Orleans Sports. We'll see you next week for another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. For Sean Fazende, I'm Eric Asher. Have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you right back here next Thursday for another edition. Thanks.